I can't pinpoint the exact moment I lost myself. It wasn't sudden. It was gradual, like drifting in a slow-moving river, carried further and further from the shore without even realizing it, until one day, I looked up and didn't recognize where I was. I used to be my own person. Confident. Independent. A man with his own dreams and opinions. But over time, little by little, my wife, Emily, reshaped me into something else. Someone who hesitated before speaking, second-guessed every decision, and learned that fighting back wasn't worth it. Arguing with her never led anywhere. Compliance was easier. "Life is so much smoother when you just go along with it," she once said, swirling her wine glass, her tone playful but her meaning sharp. I chuckled then, pretending it was a joke. But deep down, I knew she meant it. Emily wasn't cruel in the obvious ways. She didn't yell or call me names. Her control was quiet, subtle, calculated. A sigh when I made plans without asking her first. A disapproving glance when I voiced an opinion she didn't like. A gentle but firm suggestion that made me feel foolish for ever disagreeing. So, over time I just stopped. It started with small things. Letting her choose where we went out to eat. Changing my wardrobe to match her taste. Cutting out certain friends because she didn't approve of them. Before I knew it, I had become someone I no longer recognized. Then, one Sunday morning, I really saw it, for the first time. I was shaving, staring at my reflection in the bathroom mirror when my own eyes caught me off guard. They looked tired, dull, empty. I stood there, razor in hand, wondering when I had started looking like this. When had I stopped being me? The thought followed me as I stepped into the kitchen, my mind still racing. I wanted to talk to Emily, to ask her, "Who am I now? When did I change so much?" But before I could say anything, I saw her laughing at something on her phone. That's when my stomach dropped. She wasn't just laughing. She was giggling. The kind of laugh I hadn't heard from her in years. Her fingers moved quickly over the screen, replying to someone. And then, as I got closer, I saw the name. It wasn't mine. Just like that, the fog in my head cleared. All the little things I had ignored, dismissed, made excuses for, suddenly they all made sense. For years, I had been the perfect, obedient husband. But now, standing there, watching my wife smile as she texted another man, I realized something. I had been obedient for the wrong person. And it was time to take my life back. For a long time, I told myself things weren't that bad. That I was overthinking. That maybe I was just being paranoid. Emily and I had been together for years. We had history, inside jokes, shared memories. It wasn't like she was a bad wife. That's what I told myself. But that morning, staring at the message thread on her phone, I felt something inside me crack. The words blurred as my mind tried to process them. My heart pounded in my chest, a slow, sickening rhythm. The texts weren't outright explicit. No confessions of love, no blatant betrayals. But they didn't need to be. It was the tone. The familiarity. The way she responded to him instantly, eagerly, when it took her hours to reply to me. And then there was the nickname. "Miss me already, Em?" Wink emoji. No one called her that. Not me. Not her friends. That was something just for him. I felt my fingers curl into fists. But I didn't say anything. I turned away, walked back into the bathroom, and locked the door behind me. I needed a moment. A moment to breathe. To think. From the other room, I heard her humming to herself, completely unaware that her little secret had just been exposed. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel like playing along. The rest of the day, I acted normal. I had to be careful. If I confronted her now, she'd deny it, twist things, make me feel crazy. She was good at that. She'd done it before, turning small things around to make me question myself. So, I needed more than just a gut feeling and one suspicious message. That night, I started watching. And it didn't take long to see how blind I'd been. The late nights at work that never quite made sense. The sudden obsession with her appearance. The way she always seemed to step out to take certain calls. I decided to test her. She was sitting on the couch, scrolling through her phone, smiling at whatever was on the screen. I sat down beside her, closer than usual, and casually wrapped an arm around her waist. She stiffened. Just for a second. But I felt it. Then she forced a laugh, leaned into me, and, almost too smoothly, flipped her phone face down onto the couch. A habit I had never noticed before. But now it was glaringly obvious. That night, as she slept beside me, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling. Thinking. Remembering. All the little things she had said over the years that I had never questioned. The slow, careful way she had shaped me into someone manageable. Because a man who doesn't ask questions is easier to lie to. A man who doesn't argue is easier to manipulate. And I had been that man for too long. I turned onto my side, watching her sleep. Peaceful. Oblivious. She still thought she had me wrapped around her little finger. She thought I was the same obedient husband she had spent years molding. But she had no idea. Because this was the last night she would ever think she had control over me. The next morning, everything felt different. It was like waking up inside someone else's life, one I had unknowingly been sleepwalking through for years. Emily hummed as she got out of bed, stretching before heading toward the bathroom. She kissed my cheek on her way out, just like she always did. But this time, I didn't feel anything. No warmth, no familiarity, just detachment. She had no idea that I knew. I sat up, stretching as if everything was normal. That was the key. I couldn't let her suspect anything. If I confronted her now, she'd gaslight me, twist the truth, and make me doubt myself again. No. I needed more than just suspicions and a single text message. So I became something I never thought I would be. A silent observer in my own marriage. I started small. Watching the way she moved, the way she spoke, the way her fingers lingered over her phone just a little too long when she thought I wasn't looking. I noticed how she suddenly took extra time on her makeup, spritzed on perfume she hadn't worn in years. Perfume she used to wear when we first started dating, back when she wanted to impress me. Except this time, it wasn't for me. That morning, Emily told me she'd be working from home. So I left for work like usual. Except I didn't go to the office. I parked down the street, out of sight, and waited. 15 minutes later, her car eased out of the driveway. So much for working from home. I gripped the steering wheel, my knuckles white as I followed her at a safe distance. My heart pounded, adrenaline coursing through me. I didn't know where she was going, but I knew damn well it wasn't the office. She pulled into a small cafe, one we had never been to together. And then, as if it were the most natural thing in the world, a man stepped out of a car parked across the lot. I had never seen him before. They greeted each other with an ease that made my stomach turn. She touched his arm as she laughed at something he said, leaning in just a little too close. They sat by the window, talking, smiling, her hand brushing against his like it was second nature. I watched them for an hour. 60 minutes of undeniable proof. 60 minutes of betrayal playing out in real time. And as I sat there, gripping the wheel so tightly my hands ached, I felt something unexpected. Relief. Because now I knew. There was no way for her to twist this, no way for her to manipulate me into believing I was just paranoid. She had spent years making me feel small, doubt myself, become obedient. And now I had proof that I had been obedient for the wrong person. By the time I got home, she was already there, curled up on the couch, scrolling through her phone like she hadn't just spent the afternoon with another man. "Hey, babe," she said, flashing me a smile. "How was work?" I stared at her, really seeing her for the first time. The woman I had loved, the woman I had built my life around, she wasn't real. She was a mirage, an illusion I had been clinging to for far too long. "Fine," I said, forcing a smile. "Same as always." And in that moment, I made a decision. I wasn't going to yell. I wasn't going to confront her. Not yet. I was going to play along. And when the time was right, I would walk away. Not broken. Not defeated. But free. That night, I didn't sleep. I lay in bed beside Emily, listening to the rhythmic sound of her breathing, staring up at the ceiling, my mind racing. The old me, the man she had spent years reshaping, dulling down, making more manageable, would have confronted her immediately. He would have raised his voice, demanded answers, maybe even begged for an explanation. But that version of me was already gone. Emily had spent so much time controlling me, molding me into someone passive and easy to manipulate. But she had made one fatal mistake. She assumed I would stay that way forever. I had no interest in screaming or arguing. I didn't want revenge. I wasn't going to make a scene that would give her the power to play the victim. No. I wanted something better. I wanted my freedom. And I was going to take it back on my terms. The first step was simple. I stopped caring. The next morning, Emily moved through our usual routine like nothing had changed. She kissed my cheek, made her coffee, and scrolled through her phone with that same distracted smile. I wondered if she was texting him. For the first time, the thought didn't hurt me. It just confirmed what I already knew. I wasn't a part of her world anymore. And that was fine. Because I was about to build my own. I started small. I stopped texting her during the day. Stopped checking in. Stopped asking about dinner plans. At first, she didn't notice. But after a few days, she did. "You've been quiet lately," she said one evening as we sat at the table. I shrugged. "Just busy." It was a test. She knew it. I could see the way she watched me, waiting for me to elaborate, to ask if something was wrong. But I didn't. And I could see the confusion flicker in her eyes. Emily was used to control. She was used to me waiting for her approval, eager to please. And now that grip was slipping. The next step was reclaiming myself. 4 years, she had shaped my world, dictated what I wore, where we went, who I spent time with. I hadn't even realized how much of myself I had given up. Until I started taking it back. I went back to the gym. Not for her. Not to impress anyone. For me. I stopped wearing the button-down she had picked out and pulled my old leather jacket from the back of the closet, the one she once said looked too rugged. I started listening to the music I used to love, the songs she had dismissed as immature. I reconnected with old friends. The ones she never liked, the ones she had subtly pushed out of my life over the years. And with every small act of defiance, I felt something return. The man she had made me forget. But the most satisfying part? Watching her notice. She tried to act like she didn't care, but I saw it, the flicker of frustration when she asked where I was going, and I simply said, "Out." The way her brows knitted together when I came home later than usual, smelling like cologne she hadn't picked out for me. She was losing control. And for the first time in years, I felt alive. But I wasn't done yet. Because while I was rebuilding myself, Emily had no idea I was also preparing for something much bigger. A clean break. A future without her. She just didn't know it yet. Emily had spent years believing she had me figured out. She thought she knew exactly how I would react in any situation. Calm, quiet, obedient. She had trained me well. But what she never accounted for was what would happen when the string she had so carefully tied around me finally snapped. The shift was gradual. It had to be. If I changed too suddenly, she'd sense it. If she felt cornered, she'd flip the narrative, manipulate me into staying. I had seen her do it before, with friends, with coworkers. Emily was an expert at rewriting reality. But I was done being manipulated. I didn't confront her about the affair. I didn't need to. Instead, I spent weeks gathering everything I needed, bank statements, hidden texts, social media logs. She thought she was clever, deleting messages, using secret chats. But I wasn't the same man who once ignored the signs. I had learned. I had adapted. And now I had proof. I wasn't planning some dramatic confrontation, some movie-style explosion of emotion. No yelling. No accusations. That would give her a chance to fight back, to twist the truth. No, I had something far more effective in mind. I wanted her to realize she had lost before she even knew the game had changed. One morning, I left early, claiming I had a work trip. In reality, I was moving the first pieces into place. Weeks ago, I had met with a lawyer, quietly setting up everything I needed to walk away cleanly. A new apartment. A separate bank account. A financial plan that didn't involve her. Emily thought I was just having an off couple of weeks. She thought my distance was temporary. That night, I returned home later than usual. I had spent the evening with an old friend, someone she never liked because she couldn't control them. For the first time in years, I had laughed without filtering myself, spoken freely without weighing every word. And when I walked into the house, I realized something. I felt like a guest in my own home. This place, it wasn't mine. It was hers. Decorated to her taste, filled with things she had chosen, arranged in a way that suited her. It wasn't a home. Not really. It was just a place where I had once been allowed to exist under her conditions. And soon, I wouldn't even be a part of it. Emily was in the kitchen, sipping wine, scrolling through her phone. She glanced up when she heard me, flashing a carefully practiced smile. "You've been out late a lot lately," she said, tilting her head. "Everything okay?" Her voice was smooth, casual. But I saw it. The flicker of unease in her eyes. I shrugged. "Just busy." She hated that answer. I knew she did. Emily wasn't used to me keeping things from her. 4 years, I had been an open book because she had made sure of it. No. The pages were closing. And she didn't know how to handle it. She set her glass down, watching me closely. "You know, I feel like we've been a little distant lately." She reached out, placing a hand on mine. "Maybe we should go on a trip. Just the two of us." I almost laughed. A month ago, I would have clung to that suggestion like a lifeline, desperate to fix things. But I wasn't that man anymore. I pulled my hand away, slowly, deliberately. "I don't think that's a good idea." Her expression faltered. "Why not?" I met her gaze. And for the first time in years, I saw her panic. She didn't know how much I had figured out. But she knew she was losing me. And Emily had never lost control over anything in her life. For the first time, she was the one chasing me. And I had never felt more free. Emily had always been good at maintaining control. She never needed to raise her voice or make demands because she had mastered something far more powerful: influence. She made me want to please her, to agree, to obey. But that was the past. And what she failed to realize was that the power she had over me had never come from force. It had come from my willingness to submit. And I wasn't willing anymore. The first sign that things were changing was the way she watched me. At first, she tried to hide it, keeping her expression light and casual. But I saw it, the growing uncertainty, the way her eyes lingered on me when she thought I wasn't paying attention. Emily was used to being the one who set the rules. But now, she didn't know what I was thinking. And that terrified her. She started testing me. One morning, she made my coffee exactly how I used to like it. Something she hadn't done in years. She placed it in front of me with a small smile, as if this one act of kindness could erase everything. "I thought you might like this," she said, her voice too sweet. I stared at the cup for a moment, then pushed it aside. "I don't drink it like that anymore." Her smile wavered. She tried again the next night. I had been coming home later than usual, spending time at the gym, reconnecting with friends, reclaiming my life. She didn't like it. I could tell by the way her eyes followed me as I walked in, as if trying to figure out what had changed. "Maybe we should have a date night," she suggested over dinner, swirling her wine glass between her fingers. "It's been a while." She was trying to reel me back in. I could see it in the way she leaned forward slightly, in the way she was suddenly making an effort again. But it was too late. The damage had been done. I took a sip of my drink and set it down. "You should go without me." Her fingers tightened around the stem of her glass. "What do you mean?" I leaned back, watching her. "You don't need me there. You never have." The silence that followed was heavy. For the first time in our marriage, I had the power. And she hated it. She tried harder after that. Touching me more often, making my favorite meals, asking questions she had stopped asking years ago. But I had already checked out. And the real test came a few days later. I came home earlier than expected. Emily wasn't there. Her car was missing. I stepped inside, tossing my keys onto the counter. The house was quiet, but something felt off. The rug was slightly out of place. The air carried a faint trace of perfume. Not hers. I didn't need to call her. I didn't need to ask where she was. I knew. And for the first time, I didn't care. Hours later, when she finally walked through the door, Her face was carefully composed, controlled. But I saw it, the slight hesitation in her step, the flicker of tension in her eyes. "Hey," she said, forcing a smile. "How was your day?" I glanced up at her, shrugged. "Same as always." She waited for more. But I gave her nothing. And in that moment, I think she knew. Maybe not everything. Maybe she didn't know how much I had figured out. But she knew she was losing me. She just didn't realize. She had already lost. The morning I left, I took my time. There was no dramatic argument, no explosive confrontation. Just quiet finality. I had already set up my new apartment. My separate bank account was secure. Every step had been planned. I sat at the kitchen table, drinking coffee the way I liked it, not how she insisted I should. Emily walked in, still sleepy, her hair messy from bed. She blinked at me, then her eyes shifted to the duffel bag by the door. Her face tightened. "Where are you going?" I took a slow sip of my coffee, then set the cup down. "I'm leaving." Her lips parted slightly, disbelief flashing across her face. "What do you mean you're leaving?" I met her eyes. "I mean exactly that." I stood up. "I found a new place. I'm moving out." She let out a short, nervous laugh, shaking her head. "Ezra, come on. You're not serious." But she knew I was. 4 years, I had been predictable. The man who always stayed. The man who always forgave. But that man was gone. "You don't have to do this," she said quickly, stepping toward me. "We can fix things. I know I've been distant, I know things haven't been perfect, but we can work on it." She was scrambling now, grasping at straws. But it was too late. I shook my head. "No, Emily. We can't." For a moment, she just stood there, stunned. She had always been in control. She had always called the shots. She had spent years believing I would never leave. And now she was watching the man she thought she had shaped walk away, on his terms. I grabbed my bag and headed for the door. I didn't turn back. For the first time in years, I was doing something for me. The first few weeks on my own were strange. Not bad. Just different. I had spent so long living in a house that never truly felt like mine, in a marriage where I was always second-guessing myself, that the silence of my new apartment felt almost surreal. But with every passing day, that silence became peace. I started to rediscover the things I had lost. I went on long drives with the windows down, music blasting, the kind Emily always dismissed as immature. I reconnected with friends I had lost touch with because it was easier than dealing with her disapproval. And most importantly, I started living for myself. One evening, I found myself sitting in a coffee shop, flipping through a book I had been meaning to read for years but never got around to. The sun was setting outside, casting a warm glow over the city. And for the first time in a long time, I felt light. I wasn't trapped anymore. I wasn't waiting for someone else to decide my worth. I was free. And I had never been happier. Thank you for visited my YouTube channel. Your support, likes, and comments truly inspire me to create even more engaging content. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss an update. You're a part of this amazing community, and I'm thrilled to share my stories with you. See you in the next video on YouTube.